Have you ever wondered why some people seem to break every goal they set for themselves, while others consistently achieve what they set out to do? The answer may shock you. Your own mind is often your greatest saboteur, secretly signing off on goals it already knows you will abandon. That's right, my friend. The very same mind that creates your dreams is simultaneously plotting their demise. Studies have shown that nearly 87% of New Year's resolutions fail before February even ends. Think about that for a moment. The vast majority of human ambition dies within weeks of its conception. But why is it merely a lack of willpower? Insufficient motivation? The demands of daily life? No, my friend, the truth runs much deeper. There exists within each of us what I call the inner enemy, a psychological mechanism designed to keep us safely within our comfort zones, even when those zones represent mediocrity and unfulfilled potential. This inner enemy operates beneath your conscious awareness, setting you up for failure before you even begin. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to identify, confront, and ultimately defeat this inner enemy that has been silently sabotaging your success. I'll share with you the exact techniques that have helped thousands transform their lives by recognizing when their mind is working against them, and how to realign their subconscious with their conscious desires. What you're about to learn isn't taught in schools. It isn't found in ordinary self-help materials. This is the kind of transformative knowledge that separates the extraordinary achievers from the masses of dreamers who never see their ambitions realized. Before we continue, if you find value in uncompromising truths about success and human potential, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit that subscribe button now and join the community of individuals committed to mastering themselves and achieving greatness. Let me tell you something that may be difficult to hear. Your mind is divided against itself. While you consciously desire success, prosperity, and achievement, there exists a powerful force within you that fears change, resists growth, and sabotages your best intentions. This force, this inner enemy, has been shaped by every failure, every disappointment, and every painful experience you've ever endured. Consider for a moment how many times you've set an ambitious goal only to find yourself abandoning it weeks or even days later. You blame external circumstances, lack of time, insufficient resources, unexpected obstacles. But the truth is far more insidious. Your inner enemy knew from the moment you set that goal that you would never follow through. In fact, it counted on it. The conventional wisdom about goal achievement is fundamentally flawed. We're told that with enough motivation, a detailed plan, and consistent action, success is inevitable. Yet this approach fails to address the subconscious resistance that undermines our efforts from within. It's like trying to drive a car with one foot on the accelerator and one foot firmly pressed on the brake. No amount of fuel will move that vehicle forward. I recently spoke with James, a talented entrepreneur who had started and abandoned 7 different business ventures in 5 years. Each time he began with boundless enthusiasm and conviction that this time would be different. And each time, his initial momentum would gradually dissipate until he found himself making excuses, procrastinating, and eventually walking away. James isn't lazy or incapable. He's intelligent, creative, and hardworking. But his inner enemy had established a pattern of self-sabotage so deeply ingrained that it had become his default response to opportunity. Then there's Sarah, a gifted writer who has dreamed of publishing a novel since childhood. For 15 years, she's started and stopped countless manuscripts, always finding a reason why now isn't the right time to complete her work. Her inner enemy has convinced her that the dream itself is safer than the risk of failure or criticism that would come with actually pursuing it. What separates those who achieve from those who merely dream is not their talents, resources, or opportunities. It's their relationship with this inner enemy. The majority who fail to reach their potential remain unconscious of this force working against them. They sign goals with invisible ink that fades as soon as resistance appears. But the minority who triumph, those rare individuals who consistently turn vision into reality, have learned to recognize and redirect this sabotaging force. The conventional approach to achievement is like trying to build a house on a foundation of quicksand. No matter how beautiful your blueprints or how quality your materials, the structure will inevitably sink. We must first solidify the foundation by bringing the inner enemy out of the shadows and into the light of conscious awareness. What I'm about to share with you represents decades of research into the human mind and the psychology of achievement. During my years interviewing the most successful men and women of my generation, I discovered something remarkable. They all possessed an intuitive understanding of the inner enemy and had developed methods to neutralize its influence. While they used different terminology and approaches, the underlying principles remained consistent across fields, personalities, and circumstances. The solution to overcoming your inner enemy isn't found in working harder or setting more ambitious goals. That's like trying to outrun your shadow. No matter how fast you move, it matches your pace. Instead, the solution lies in understanding the psychological mechanisms that create this self-sabotage and implementing a systematic approach to reprogramming your subconscious mind. I've developed a methodology that allows you to identify precisely how your inner enemy operates in your life, recognize its predictable patterns, and ultimately transform it from an adversary into an ally. This isn't about suppressing or fighting against this force that only strengthens its resistance. Rather, it's about illumination, integration, and redirection. When Andrew Carnegie introduced me to the most successful individuals of our time, I noticed they shared a common trait. They had mastered their internal world before conquering the external one. They understood that true power comes not from controlling circumstances, but from controlling the mind's response to those circumstances. Their achievements weren't the result of extraordinary talents, but of extraordinary thinking. What separates my approach from conventional wisdom is its focus on the subconscious patterns that precede action. Most methods address only the visible parts of achievement: goal setting, planning, taking action. But these are merely surface manifestations of deeper mental processes. By the time you're taking action, the battle has already been largely won or lost in the subconscious mind. You're about to discover a path that few will ever travel, not because it's inaccessible, but because most people never become aware of its existence. This path leads not just to achievement, but to a fundamental shift in how you experience the pursuit of your goals. Where once there was struggle and resistance, you'll find alignment and flow. Where there was frustration and self-sabotage, you'll discover momentum and fulfillment. The methods I'm about to share have transformed the lives of thousands, from business leaders to artists, from athletes to parents seeking to pass these principles to their children. These aren't theoretical concepts, but practical tools that produce measurable results when applied with understanding and consistency. Imagine for a moment what your life would be like if your subconscious mind worked in perfect harmony with your conscious desires. If every part of you was aligned toward the achievement of your goals. This isn't merely possible. It's your natural state once you remove the accumulated programming that created your inner enemy in the first place. The path to overcoming your inner enemy begins with understanding that this force wasn't born with you, it was created through experience. Every time you failed, were criticized, or experienced pain associated with stretching beyond your comfort zone, your subconscious mind recorded that data and created protective mechanisms to prevent similar pain in the future. What began as protection has become limitation. The first principle in defeating this self-sabotage is what I call conscious recognition. Your inner enemy operates most effectively in darkness, manipulating your decisions while remaining hidden from awareness. By bringing it into the light of consciousness, you immediately diminish its power. Think of it like turning on a light in a room where shadows have been playing tricks on your vision. Suddenly, what seemed threatening becomes recognizable and manageable. When you set a goal that generates immediate internal resistance, the sudden fatigue, the convenient distractions, the persuasive rationalizations for delay, recognize this as your inner enemy's signature. It's like a fingerprint at the scene of a crime. These aren't random reactions but precise, predictable responses designed to keep you safely within familiar territory. Consider Thomas Edison's journey to creating the electric light bulb. He encountered over 10,000 failures before achieving success. If he had allowed his inner enemy to interpret those failures as evidence of his inadequacy or impossibility of the task, we might still be reading by candlelight today. Instead, Edison understood that failure wasn't a verdict, but that each unsuccessful attempt eliminated one possibility and brought him closer to the solution. Your relationship with failure determines your capacity for success. Those who fear failure give their inner enemy its greatest weapon. Those who reinterpret failure as feedback neutralize that weapon entirely. Every time you avoid taking action because you might fail, your inner enemy grows stronger. Every time you act despite that fear, it grows weaker. The second principle is pattern interruption. Your inner enemy relies on habitual responses, the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that automatically activate when you pursue meaningful change. By consciously interrupting these patterns, you create space for new responses to emerge. This is like changing the tracks a train runs on. The power remains the same, but the destination changes completely. I worked with a writer who found herself abandoning every book project at precisely the 70-page mark. Once we identified this pattern, she created a specific ritual for page 70 that interrupted her usual abandonment response. She would change her writing location, light a special candle, and read testimonials from readers who had been impacted by her previous work. This simple pattern interruption was enough to break through the barrier that had stopped her for years. Your inner enemy speaks to you in a voice that sounds remarkably like your own. It offers reasonable-sounding justifications for inaction, convincing explanations for why now isn't the right time or this approach won't work for someone like you. Learning to distinguish this voice from your authentic wisdom is crucial. The voice of the inner enemy induces contraction feelings of limitation, fear, and scarcity. Your authentic voice creates expansion, possibility, curiosity, and abundance. Imagine your mind as a garden. Your inner enemy plants weeds of doubt, fear, and self-limitation that appear to be part of the natural landscape. Until you recognize these as unwanted intrusions rather than essential elements, you'll continue maintaining them alongside your aspirations, not realizing they're choking out your potential. The third principle is strategic redirection. Rather than fighting against your inner enemy, which only creates more resistance, you learn to redirect its energy toward your goals. This is the psychological equivalent of a martial artist using an opponent's momentum against them. The force remains the same, but its direction and outcome change completely. When Henry Ford decided to create an affordable automobile for the average American, his inner enemy presented all the reasons it couldn't be done: the technological limitations, the production costs, the market skepticism. Rather than suppressing these concerns, he redirected them into questions. How can we overcome these technical challenges? How can we reduce production costs while maintaining quality? How can we create demand in an untested market? The same energy that could have fueled abandonment instead powered innovation. Your inner enemy's objections often contain valuable information about the obstacles you need to address. The key is not to let these objections become conclusions, therefore. I can't do this, but to transform them into questions. How can I overcome this? This simple shift changes your relationship with resistance from adversarial to collaborative. Before we continue to the next principle, I'd like you to pause and reflect on what has resonated most strongly with you so far. What patterns of your inner enemy have you recognized in your own life? Share your insights in the comments below. Not only will this deepen your own understanding, but your experience may illuminate the path for others facing similar challenges. As you begin implementing these principles, your inner enemy will mount a defense. This is not only natural, but expected. It's evidence that you're making progress. Just as a muscle grows stronger through resistance, your ability to achieve grows through overcoming internal opposition. You may be thinking, this sounds compelling, but I've tried to change my patterns before and always returned to old habits. This objection itself is the voice of your inner enemy, using past evidence to justify future limitations. Remember that your previous attempts lacked the conscious understanding of the mechanism you were fighting against. It's like trying to win a chess match without knowing the rules or your opponent's strategy. Now, you're playing a different game entirely. Have you asked yourself why certain people can overcome tremendous external obstacles while others are stopped by minor inconveniences? The difference lies not in their circumstances, but in their relationship with internal resistance. External obstacles are rarely what stop us, it's our interpretation of those obstacles, filtered through our inner enemy, that determines whether we persevere or surrender. Consider the case of Helen Keller, who, despite being both deaf and blind, became one of the most influential authors and speakers of her time. Her external limitations far exceeded what most of us will ever face. Yet her achievements eclipse what many accomplish with all faculties intact. The difference wasn't in her circumstances, but in her refusal to allow her inner enemy to define what was possible. You might wonder, can these principles work for someone like me, with my specific challenges and background? This question assumes that your challenges are somehow exceptional or that success requires optimal conditions. In my interviews with over 500 of the most successful individuals across all fields, I discovered that greatness isn't born from perfect circumstances, but from a perfect response to imperfect circumstances. Your inner enemy will suggest that you need more information, more preparation, or more favorable conditions before you can act decisively. This is one of its most effective tactics, using perpetual preparation as a substitute for actual performance. Ask yourself, is this additional preparation truly necessary, or is it a sophisticated form of procrastination? Some will say, I understand these concepts intellectually, but I don't feel emotionally ready to change. This perspective reverses the true order of transformation. Emotional readiness doesn't precede action, it follows it. When you act in accordance with your highest goals, despite emotional resistance, new emotions emerge to align with your actions. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in the presence of fear. Your inner enemy may whisper that these principles require too much time and effort, that the process of transformation will detract from your immediate responsibilities. But consider the time and energy you already expend fighting against yourself, managing the stress of unfulfilled potential, and justifying why you haven't achieved your goals. The initial investment in realigning your subconscious mind yields dividends that compound over a lifetime. Perhaps you're concerned that overcoming your inner enemy means abandoning caution entirely and taking reckless risks. This misunderstands the nature of the transformation. The goal isn't to eliminate prudent assessment, but to distinguish between genuine wisdom and fear-based limitation. Your authentic self can make sound judgments without the distorting influence of excessive fear or self-doubt. Ask yourself this question: What would be possible for me if I no longer worked against myself? The magnitude of this question reveals the true cost of allowing your inner enemy to remain in control. Every dream deferred, every goal abandoned, every potential left unrealized can be traced back to this internal conflict. The path I'm describing isn't easy, but its difficulty is precisely what makes it valuable. If transforming your relationship with your inner enemy were simple, everyone would achieve extraordinary results. The challenge of the process is what separates those who merely wish for better outcomes from those who actually create them. Now that we've explored the individual principles for overcoming your inner enemy, let's understand how they work together as an integrated system. Just as a master pianist must coordinate both hands to create harmony, you must synchronize these principles to create lasting transformation. Think of your mind as a vast ocean. The conscious mind is the surface, visible and accessible, while the subconscious is the depth, powerful, mysterious, and largely unexplored. Your inner enemy operates in those depths, creating currents that affect everything on the surface. The principles I've shared allow you to dive beneath the surface, understand those currents, and gradually redirect them. The integration of these principles follows a natural sequence. First, conscious recognition identifies the patterns of self-sabotage. Then, pattern interruption creates space for new responses. And finally, strategic redirection channels that energy toward your goals. This sequence transforms the very force that once limited you into the power that propels you forward. When properly integrated, these principles create what I call the achievement alignment, a state where your conscious goals and subconscious patterns work in perfect harmony rather than opposition. Imagine driving a car where all components function in coordination. The engine generates power. The transmission directs that power to the wheels, and the steering system guides the vehicle precisely where you intend to go. Now, let me offer you a simplified action plan to implement this integrated approach immediately. Begin each morning by clarifying your highest priorities and anticipating how your inner enemy might attempt to derail them. This conscious forecast makes the subconscious patterns visible before they activate. Write down specific responses to these potential sabotage attempts. For example, when I feel sudden fatigue before working on my priority project, I will recognize this as resistance rather than a genuine need for rest. Take 3 deep breaths and work for just 5 minutes to build momentum. Throughout your day, maintain heightened awareness. During transition points, those moments between activities when your inner enemy is most likely to redirect you toward comfortable distractions. Create a physical cue, such as touching your wrist or taking a specific breath pattern, that brings you back to conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Each evening, review instances where you recognized and redirected your inner enemy, celebrating these victories regardless of their size. Also note patterns that escaped your awareness until after they'd affected your actions. This daily review accelerates your learning and strengthens neural pathways, supporting your new responses. Weekly, identify one core limiting belief that your inner enemy uses repeatedly and create a specific challenge that directly confronts this belief. If your inner enemy whispers that you lack creativity, establish a daily practice of generating 10 new ideas regardless of their quality. Direct confrontation with limiting beliefs through consistent action is the fastest path to their dissolution. What makes this system so powerful is that it creates a positive feedback loop. Each time you successfully identify and redirect your inner enemy, you strengthen both your awareness and your ability to change your response. Just as compound interest transforms modest investments into fortunes over time, consistent application of these principles creates exponential growth in your ability to achieve. I often use the metaphor of taming a wild horse to describe this process. Initially, the horse, your powerful subconscious, bucks against guidance and runs where it wishes. The inexperienced rider either gets thrown off, giving up on goals, or pulls too harshly on the reins, creating internal conflict. But the skilled rider builds relationship and communication with the horse, eventually creating a partnership where the horse's power and the rider's direction work as one. The goal isn't to break the horse's spirit, but to channel its natural energy. When all these principles work in concert, you'll experience what many of my students describe as effortless achievement, not because the work itself requires no effort, but because you're no longer expending energy fighting against yourself. The same tasks that once drained you through internal resistance now energize you through internal alignment. Remember that this transformation isn't instantaneous but cumulative. Just as water shapes rock, not through force, but through consistent action over time. Your new awareness and responses gradually reshape the contours of your subconscious mind. Each recognition, each interruption, each redirection is a drop of water on the stone of your inner enemy. Imperceptible in the moment, but transformative over time. The knowledge I've shared with you today holds the power to transform your relationship with achievement forever, but only if you transform it from information into action. Ideas without implementation remain merely intellectual entertainment rather than catalysts for change. The moment to begin is not tomorrow, not when circumstances improve, not when you feel more confident, but now, this very moment. Your inner enemy is counting on your delay. It knows that the gap between learning and application is where most transformation dies. Every hour you wait strengthens its conviction that you'll remain safely within the boundaries of familiar limitation rather than stepping into the uncertainty of growth. Look around at your life right now. The results you currently experience reflect the relationship you've had with your inner enemy up to this point. If you continue that same relationship, physics itself dictates that your future results will mirror your present reality. Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing repeatedly while expecting different outcomes. True sanity, then, is changing your approach when your current methods fail to produce your desired results. The responsibility for implementing these principles rests entirely on your shoulders. No one can recognize your patterns of self-sabotage for you. No one can interrupt those patterns when they arise. No one can redirect your mental energy from limitation to possibility. These actions require your conscious choice, your sustained attention, and your unwavering commitment. Consider what waits on the other side of this transformation. Imagine pursuing your most meaningful goals without the constant drag of self-doubt, procrastination, and conflicting impulses. Imagine your creative energy flowing freely toward your highest priorities rather than being consumed by internal resistance. Imagine the momentum that builds when you consistently align your actions with your intentions. Many will hear these principles and nod in agreement, perhaps feel momentarily inspired, and then return to their habitual patterns unchanged. They'll become living evidence of the very mechanism I've described. Their inner enemy will ensure they take no meaningful action on what they've learned. They'll find reasonable-sounding justifications for why now isn't the right time, or this wouldn't work in my specific situation. Will you be among them? Or will you join the smaller group who recognize this moment as a genuine opportunity for transformation, who understand that uncommon results require uncommon commitment? The path I've outlined isn't easy, but its rewards exceed anything that comes without challenge. The initial discomfort of confronting your inner enemy pales in comparison to the lifelong discomfort of knowing you've lived beneath your capabilities. As Theodore Roosevelt wisely observed, far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. Begin today with a single, simple action. Identify one important goal that your inner enemy has repeatedly sabotaged. Write down the specific thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that have emerged each time you've attempted to pursue this goal. This act of conscious recognition immediately changes your relationship with these patterns from unconscious submission to conscious observation. Then, create a specific plan for how you'll respond differently when these patterns next appear, because they will appear. Your inner enemy doesn't surrender territory without resistance. Anticipate this resistance not as an obstacle but as confirmation that you're moving in exactly the right direction. Growth always creates friction. I challenge you now to make a declaration, not a casual intention, but a binding commitment to yourself. Declare that from this moment forward, you will no longer allow your inner enemy to sign goals it knows you will break. Declare that you will become the conscious author of your actions rather than a passive observer of your habitual responses. Declare that your potential matters enough to justify the discomfort of change. If this message has resonated with you, take a moment right now to subscribe to this channel and share in the comments below the specific insight that most powerfully impacted your thinking. Your articulation of this insight will not only cement it more firmly in your own mind, but may provide the precise perspective someone else needs in their journey. Remember this truth: your inner enemy persists not because of its power, but because of your unawareness. With each act of recognition, each pattern interruption, each strategic redirection, you reclaim authority over your own mind. This authority is your birthright, the foundation of all achievement, all fulfillment, and all meaningful contribution to the world. The person you are capable of becoming awaits on the other side of this transformation, not in some distant future, but immediately accessible through the choices you make today. The only question that remains is this: will you accept the invitation to become that person? Or will you allow your inner enemy to keep signing goals it knows you will break? The choice is yours. Choose wisely. Choose now.